Here's the thing. We've all been in those situations that are like really awkward where I wonder if my GIFs are working. Show that first GIF. It's Jim from The Office, but for whatever reason, when I load those on the computer, they don't work the way I want them to. But you guys, have you seen some of these weird memes? Like, check out this one right here. In middle school, when you would trade and grade papers, and somebody asked the teacher if your answer was close enough, but everybody knows he's talking about your paper because of the way the teacher told you to trade papers, right? Like if it's like, pass your paper to the person behind you, and then the person behind throws it up to the front row, and then that person asks a question, and everybody knows it's your answer. Yeah, hashtag relatable. Okay, how about this one? When it's 2 a.m. at the sleepover, and you and your bestie decide to cut each other's bangs. You're laughing as if that comes from experience. Yes. All right. It makes you feel like, have you seen this GIF? I don't think it, yeah. Awkward. That's like my favorite one. Okay, or I think I got one more meme for you. Teacher says pick a partner. Look at your friend like this. You guys do that? You stare at each other from across the room. You're like, it's pretty great. All right, I got to tell you guys about one of the most awkward things that I have ever had to endure, and I need somebody to help me. So I saw your hand, and I saw somebody's hand. Bring your chair, though. Bring a chair. I need your help to help me tell this story. So you set yours just exactly like that, right there. And you put yours in front of it, right there, facing that way.
Like that? Sit.
Face that way, though. Yep, you can sit. You're going to face that way, though.
Yeah,
spin it around.
Oh, wait.
There you go, yeah. So,
Do I spin it around too?
nope, you're going to sit right there.
Okay.
But scoot it up like close to hers. There you go. So, you guys are in class. Teacher's over here lecturing. And so when I was in 8th grade, this was me, and this was my best friend Kyle. Say hi, Kyle.
Hi, Kyle.
And so I was really annoying in class, and so I was like kicking his seat. You guys ever have people that do that? They rest their feet on the back of your seat and then are like kicking and stuff? And so Kyle turns around and he goes, Zach, stop it. There you go.
No.
Yeah. That's what I did. So after about 10 minutes of this, Kyle was fed up with it. So he was being a good student, taking notes. So when you're in a pickle, you just use whatever is available to you, right? So he takes the pencil and jams it into my leg.
Oh.
But here's the awkward part. In the middle of this lecture, I was holding in something. And when he hit me, I went, oh, and farted real loud, right? So go ahead. No, I'm just kidding. I'm asking you to fart on command. I realize it's difficult. But some people have the gift.
I can burp on command.
You can burp on command. Okay. We'll burp and we'll pretend it's a fart. That was it. Okay. So thank you. You guys can give them a round of applause. Take your chairs and you can go back to your seat now. Yeah. Encore. So I remember that being one of the most awkward times in class because everyone was being quiet. We were taking notes. And you know, like sometimes when you're holding in a fart and your stomach makes those like sounds and everybody looks at you like you farted and you're like, it was my stomach, I promise. And half the time it is. Half. And then, yeah, stabs me, middle of quiet class, and just, oh. Because, you know, when you like are holding stuff in, it takes just a little bit of pressure and and then it comes out. That happened. Half the class looks over at our little corner and I'm like, but I was like beet red and like convulsing laughing, right? And the funny part of that story is I still have like a pencil tattoo right there where he stabbed me. No way. Yeah, it's a scar that continues to tell its story throughout the years. So thank you, Kyle, for that. So here's the thing. We've all been in awkward situations. We've all been in situations where, like, just like that meme, you're just kind of like, I'm uncomfortable, right? Okay, so we're going to have some real talk. And in this series, if you've been around our church for very long, then you know that Valentine's Day is coming, which means in the student ministry, we talk about love, relationships, dating, and the S word. And so this is that week. We're going to be talking about sex and relationships. Everybody go, woo woo! Yeah, and cue meme. Right? So I get that this is sometimes not the most exciting thing to talk about in church because it's a little awkward if we're honest. But some of you, I know deep down, you're going to pretend it's awkward, but you're like, tell me more, right? So let's just acknowledge all the mixed feelings in the room right now and move on, because we're going to talk about this because it's really important. And at church, we really want this to be a place where we can talk about anything and everything. And listen, it's really no big deal, because I'm not going to say anything new to you guys. I'm not going to say anything you don't already know. And the reality is, we all have questions when it comes to every subject, including ones that are taboo, and we're not supposed to ask our questions out loud sometimes, right? But we all have questions, and you can ask your adult leaders in small group, because they'll say, yes, I had those questions when I was your age. Is it okay to talk about sex, right? Or is it okay to talk about sex in church, right? Do I have to talk about that if I'm not even allowed to date yet, right? That might be something going through your mind. How many of your parents are like, you're not allowed to have a boyfriend or girlfriend yet, right? How many you've had that talk? To your 31. Nice. I like. Your dad's like, you can't get married. I like it. Okay. Or maybe questions like, you're wondering, maybe, is it normal to be curious about sex? I think you know the answer to that, right? Is it normal to have feelings about things as my body's changing? That's a good question. If I'm doing stuff nobody knows about, am I in trouble? That's something I had a question about. You're just going, yes. Yes to you're in trouble, or yes, I have that question. Does God have anything to say about sexual things? Why should I even care what God says about sex and dating? Look, there's a million more questions we could talk about, right? And I get it. But the bottom line is it's normal to have questions when it comes to everything, including this. So here's the thing. We're just going to have a conversation about it, because the reality is that this stuff is talked about everywhere else in your life, right? You go to school, you can't help but overhear the conversations in the hallway, in the bathroom, in the locker room. It's part of life sometimes. When you're watching TV, unfortunately, sex sells. So it's in a lot of TV. It's in a lot of movies. It's in a lot of, even if it's not like sex that's in the movie, there's sexuality that is implied or thrown in front of you or talked about in the dialogue, because it's what people seem to like to talk about. It's what gets people's attention. So it's everywhere you look. It's on social media. It's in the hashtags. It's on the pictures. It's in whatever. And so there is no real avoiding it. It's in the music we listen to. You turn on any radio station. It could be country. It could be pop. It could be, well, not Christian, because that'd be weird. But pretty much any other station, you're going to find it there too. It is a topic of conversation in every other circle of culture. And so here's the thing. God made it. Let's talk about it. So we're going to look actually to something where God didn't talk about this specifically, but it applies to this topic very deeply. And we're going to look to something that Matthew wrote, which, how many of you guys know who Matthew is? Somebody just tell me, who is Matthew? He's Matthew. He's a tax collector. What else about him? He's a dude, yep. He's a person.
He has feelings.
In The Chosen, he's OCD, yeah. He's one of the 12 disciples. There you go. So Matthew, he was around Jesus a lot, which means he's probably a credible witness. He saw the stuff firsthand, and he writes it down. And so we're going to look at a passage that we've actually looked at quite a bit in this area, because it's really important to grasp, especially at your age. But it's this. You guys know the story probably if you've grown up in church. If not, then it's a good story for you to know about Christianity, because this was one of the most key moments in Jesus' ministry, where Jesus is teaching, and then somebody comes up, probably a religious leader. Yeah, a religious leader comes up and he asks Jesus, trying to trick him and trap him, he says, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" Right? And now, how many of you guys have read your entire Old Testament? It's okay. How many of you read some of the first 5 books in the Old Testament? There's a lot of rules. Anybody read Leviticus or Numbers or Deuteronomy? There's lots of rules in there. 613, I believe. 611, depending on how you count it. So, there's a lot of stuff that's in there. There's things we're supposed to do, things we're supposed to not do, stuff we're supposed to follow. And so this guy's like, "Yo, Jesus, which one should I focus on the most? Which one's the best?" And here's what Jesus says. Because most of us, when we think about it, we think, oh, read the Bible every day. Or always show up at church, right? That's the greatest commandment. Pray the right prayers. Never make a mistake. That's the greatest commandment. But no, Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it, to love your neighbor as all the law and the prophets hang on these 2 commands. Basically, if you get these 2 right, love God, love others, everything else pretty much falls under those categories, right? Including sex and dating. So, that's why we're going to use this first week as a reference, because this is a first one. We've got to get our mindset right when we approach this topic, okay? So, he's saying you got to love God and love others. The most important thing we can do, the most important way that we can live the best life possible, and the most important thing to think about when making decisions about anything is to love God and love others. This is what Jesus says is the greatest commandment, right? Sometimes it's called the golden rule. Treat others the way you want to be treated, right? You guys heard that before, right? Right? Jesus came up with that. So, boom. You didn't even know it was a Bible verse, some of you. You're welcome, right? But here's the thing. God wants us to live with integrity. And when we love God and love others, that's the best way we can live with the most integrity, okay? And for the purposes of today's conversation, integrity just means doing the right thing in all circumstances, even if no one is watching. Okay? Doing the right thing in all circumstances, even when no one is watching, okay? And when it comes to sex and relationships, God wants us to have sexual integrity. It's where we do the right thing in all circumstances, even when nobody is watching. And that means choosing, and this is really important, okay? So this is choosing to respond to the sexual things that we feel and that we think or that we desire in a way that honors God, others, and yourself. Love God, love others the way you love yourself. So, when it comes to integrity, and specifically with this series, when it comes to sexual integrity, the best thing to do is to respond to the things that we inevitably will feel, the things that we inevitably will think about, the things that we inevitably will desire. Respond to those things in a way that honors yourself, that honors those around you, and that honors your Creator. That's the best thing that you can do. And it's really important that we start there, because that sets the framework for every other way we have the conversation moving forward. Honor God, honor others, honor yourself with your actions, with your thoughts, with your motives. So, it's important that we have a real talk when it comes to sex and dating. It helps us to just be honest with ourselves about these things, to be honest with our approach, and to just really look at this the way that I think God designed us to. Like I said, this is talked about in pretty much every other circle of our culture. In every other environment, this stuff is brought up. And we are told what to think about it from all those other sources. Right? If I were to ask you and poll you anonymously and you didn't have to say something out loud in the middle of youth group, like, what is the message that the world seems to say about sex and dating? Right? You'd have probably a lot of things to say about that. There's a lot of messages out there about what's okay, what's not okay, what you should think about, what you shouldn't think about, what you should do, what you should not do, how you should talk about it, how you shouldn't talk about it, what you should look at, what you shouldn't look at. And there's lots of messages out there. So, if we're going to understand the best message, we should probably understand it coming from the person who created it, which is God. And so, what I don't want you to walk away from is thinking that this topic is something that is just evil, that is dirty. That's not the reality, because God made it. So we should think about it in the way that God tells us we should think about it. We should approach it the way that God created it to be approached. And when we think about it within the framework of the Creator and how He designed it, that makes a pretty significant difference in our lives and how we approach this altogether. And you're going to avoid a world of hurt if you just do things the way that God created you to do them. Because whenever we take things outside of His design, it always makes it harder on us. So a couple things that I just want to remind you of that I'm sure you know, but should be reminded of, especially when it comes to this topic, is that one, if you've ever been not honored when it comes to this stuff, whether somebody sent you something that was unsolicited, you didn't want, or it was something else, maybe something worse, that's not on you. So you don't need to feel shame about that. But you should find an adult to talk to that you trust about it, because that's really important. Okay, so I want you to know that, first and foremost, actions done to you are not on you. They're not your fault. You shouldn't feel shame about it, and you should talk to somebody that you trust. The second thing is that even if you have made mistakes in this area already, which statistically speaking would not be out of the ordinary, you can start over anytime. It doesn't mean God is mad at you. It doesn't mean God hates you. It doesn't mean that your chances are blown, that there's no way that you can recover. There's no way to start over. That's just not what the Bible teaches. So if you're in that boat, just know, hey, we all make mistakes, and you can start today to approach this the way that God would have you approach it, and that's okay. So you should also find a trusted adult to talk about that with as well. So it's important to have real talk. When we hide things, when we have to keep things to ourselves, when we let our shame govern our decisions and our actions moving forward, well, that's when generally more mistakes ensue. That's when we get into even more trouble when it comes to this. So I encourage you, let's have some real talk about it. You don't have to talk to me about it. You don't have to talk about it in front of your whole group if you don't feel comfortable. But I would encourage you to find somebody you can talk to about it, somebody that's wiser than you, somebody that's a little bit older than you, and somebody who also follows Jesus. If you can find those people, it's important to have real talk about this. And this whole series is just an off-ramp to be able to have those conversations. It's an icebreaker. Say, hey, we're talking about this stuff. There it is. It's giving you a cue where you can then take that where you feel the Spirit is leading. But it's important to have real talk when it comes to this kind of stuff. Remember that Jesus wants what is best for our lives. And He said it best when He said, loving God, loving others, and loving ourselves is the best approach to every decision, but especially when it comes to this. So, how do we start? How do we go from here? So, three things that I want you to think about, questions that you can ask as we approach this conversation in the next coming weeks. Or whenever you're faced with decisions in your own life. So, first thing is ask yourself, will this show love and respect to the other person? If you're trying to decide what you're supposed to be doing, if you're put in a situation or you're being tempted with something, then think about this. Will this show love and respect towards the other person? Think about the choice that you're making. Are you keeping their best interest in mind, or are you thinking about what you want most? Right? Does it make them uncomfortable? Is it putting them in a position that they're not ready for yet? Is it treating them like God created them and God honors them? Right? Are you considering how they might feel afterward? Are you honoring and respecting the other person? Secondly, will this show love and respect to me? Are you thinking about your future? Are you thinking about stuff that will happen and move forward beyond this moment? Or are you just thinking about what you want right now? Right? Are you thinking about, the other person's actions? Are they respecting you? Are they honoring you? Are you able to stand firm and say, hey, this is my line in the sand. I'm not okay with this? Have you talked boundaries? If you haven't, then how do you know if you're being honored and respected? Right? So number 3 is, will this show love and respect to God? All right, so God created all this. Is this within His design? Does dating this person or looking at those pictures or making this decision feel loving and respectful towards God? And if it's something that you feel like you have to hide, The answer is probably no. If it's something that you feel too embarrassed to talk about, the answer is probably no. So use your conscience, use the Holy Spirit who's living inside of you, convicting you. If you've given your life to Jesus, He will guide you. You'll have some red flags going off. You probably know what's right and what's wrong without me telling you. Because I think we're just kind of instinctively knowing when it comes to that kind of thing. But if you're unsure, again, talk to a trusted adult. Will this show love and respect to me, to the other person, and to God? These are important things to ask when you're thinking about this conversation. It's important to have real talk. So, as you guys get ready to go to your groups, what's one question that you have when it comes to sex and dating? Maybe it has to do with just when is it okay to date? When is it okay to think about taking a relationship to another level? All those kind of questions. There's lots of questions that come up with this conversation that aren't necessarily having anything to do with the awkward parts of the conversation. So what question do you have, whether it's about sex or dating or whatever, when it comes to this topic? What's one question you have? Let me pray, and then I'll let you guys go to your small groups.